Absolutely, sir.
Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, sir. Merry Christmas
to you.
sir.
And to you too. Good afternoon. Thanks to everyone for being here today. You know, we're gathered together to talk about a number of different topics, but I want to really recognize the extraordinary accomplishments of our West Virginia National Guard and of our Department of Veterans Assistance over the last year. But I first want to start out by honoring the two West Virginia Guard members whose sacrifice shook the world. Today I'm announcing that the state of West Virginia, through my office, has formally requested that U.S. Army Specialist Sarah Beckstrom be posthumously awarded the Purple Heart for her service and sacrifice while protecting our nation's capital in Washington, D.C. Specialist Beckstrom was killed in action while serving her country. She made the ultimate sacrifice defending the freedoms we all hold dear. Her courage, her selflessness, and her devotion represent the very best of West Virginia and our country. We've also requested that the same honor be bestowed to Air Force Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolfe, who served alongside her that day. As you all know, he was also a member of the West Virginia National Guard, and he was critically injured in that attack. And he fought for his life for weeks. But we've been getting more encouraging news about Andrew. It's terrific. He's starting to make a journey on the way to a remarkable recovery. So that's outstanding for his family, for the members of the unit, and for all the citizens in our state and our country that have prayed for Andrew and tried to lift him up and give him strength and give his family strength. So it's wonderful to hear that news. Sarah and Andrew's actions on that day, they meet the highest and clearest standards for the Purple Heart, a decoration that recognizes those wounded or killed in action against an enemy or during a hostile or terrorist act. So this should qualify under the Terrorist Act. Now, while that process is still underway at the federal level, I want the families of Sarah Beckstrom and Andy Wolfe to know that West Virginia stands with you, and I couldn't think of two more deserving service members for this award. So this is wonderful. Now, beyond a lot of the focus on Sarah and Andy in recent weeks, it'd be remiss of me not to talk about the greater sacrifices of the Guard in 2025. There were so many extraordinary men and women who served the Guard with distinction over the last year. And we know that when Specialist Beckstrom and Staff Sergeant Wolfe, that when they were in peril, so many of the Guardsmen, they rallied around behind them. I saw that at the hospital and at the DC Armory on Thanksgiving when I visited with them. The National Guard has answered the call every single time. They answered the call earlier this year when they're called to missions in the Middle East, in Europe, and in the southern border of the U.S. They answered the call when flooding threatened our regions, first down south, and then, of course, up in Marion County and Ohio County. In the February 25 flooding, more than 350 service members mobilized across 14 counties, and they conducted swift water rescues. They provide water and supplies for people. They cleared more than 17,000 tons of debris. You're going to have to tell me how you clear all that debris. That's a pretty impressive thing. That's one of these things. These guys are really good. They're very organized about getting big things done. We know that during the flash flooding of Ohio and Marion counties, there were some really troubling things that happened. Obviously, we know that there have been 12 deaths this year due to flooding. We're going to do something about that. We're going to try to, in the next legislative session, take some steps we think that are going to be helpful. So I'm looking forward to that, and you just have to wait a couple more weeks for the state of the state. We may tease some of that out. Positive things based upon good work, once again, of the Guard and our emergency management people. We know during the federal government shutdown, the Guard also stepped up. When some families didn't know where their next meal was coming from, the West Virginia National Guard, they were there. Through Operation Feeding Families, 164 service members distributed more than 1 million pounds of food to more than 400 food pantries statewide. And as you know, the state also stepped up and provided $13 million, and that's on top of the full monthly benefits that they were getting. So that's a lot more food than was normally allocated, and we wanted to make sure that no one was going to be hungry, and I think we accomplished that goal. Beyond emergency response, we know how important the Guard is to our state, economically, the value that they provide, and the support they get from the federal government. I can tell you that when the West Virginia Army National Guard, their cavalry regiment, was at risk of being cut, our administration, working with General Seward and others, worked to transform this regiment into a new infantry battalion so we wouldn't see the loss of jobs here in West Virginia. We prize the armed services in our state, and we always want to show them great respect. That move converted the 150th Cavalry into a tactical combat formation, and that enhances the unit's combat readiness so they can be available for the demands of modern warfare. And meanwhile, that preserved hundreds of jobs, many in the southern coal fields. So we're very fortunate for that. We also know that the Guard and veterans, they're working to help build the workforce of tomorrow. And you can see some initiatives in the upcoming weeks talking about it, their inclusion in broader workforce development matters. I've always argued that workforce participation is the #1 challenge facing West Virginia. We need to get more people into the workforce. We need to have more net migration of people into the state. Well, I know that the Guard and veterans assistance can make a big difference in that regard. We know that Guard-supported training programs already, they're preparing West Virginians for different fields in heavy industry, in equipment operation, agriculture, and skilled trains. When you get trained and you spend time in the Guard, there's an awful lot you can do after you're done, and we're really grateful to these wonderful men and women who are doing so much for our state. So I'm pleased here to make these announcements and focus on the Purple Heart. I'm very hopeful that that's going to happen, and at this time I'd like to allow General Seward to come up for a few words.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon. I'd like to begin by thanking the members of the West Virginia National Guard for an incredible year. When I was a kid, there was a commercial that talked about the National Guard 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. That's 39 days a year. The West Virginia National Guard, on average, on the Army side, has done 80 days per year per soldier and 157 days per year for each member of our Air Guard. It has been an incredibly busy year, but this team behind me and the 6,000 other members of the West Virginia National Guard that make all of these things happen, they are always ready and always there. We honor Sarah and Andrew today as we've done this last month. Thank you, Governor, for the announcement today. I've been telling the team that while we have to mourn because it's part of the grieving process and that's how we honor our fallen, we also have to accomplish the mission every day. The sign on the podium talks about America's heritage, and it reminds me of the American Revolution or World War II, where our soldiers facing enemy fire may watch one of their battle buddies fall. They have to continue the mission. They also have to mourn. If you read history books, you'll learn about those soldiers continuing on, maybe tears streaming down their face while they continue the fight. Our battlefield's a little different today, but we have to continue that fight. And when you see one of us in the community, you'll see this flag, and people often ask us, why does it face backward? And that's because we're always moving forward, regardless of the obstacle, regardless of the mission, regardless of whether or not we're mourning, we are moving forward. And that's what these gentlemen represent behind us today. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the employers of West Virginia. Every one of these National Guards, men and women that are part-time deployable soldiers or airmen, they have a job, and those civilian employers support them when they're gone. And so I thank those employers and their families, because the families are the ones that are left to take care of all the chores and all the business while these troops are on flood mission or a food mission or doing patrols in DC. So thank you, Governor. It's tremendously rewarding to work for you and for all of the 6,000 members of the West Virginia National Guard. And regardless of the mission, regardless of the day, we will press on. Thank you.
Thank you, General. Well, thank you very much, General. I very much appreciate the work that you're doing, plus the work of the Guard. It's tireless, but they always stand strong for our citizens. Now, as we close out the year, I also want to recognize the outstanding work of the Department of Veterans Assistance. This is an agency that also makes sure we take care of the men and women in uniform who took care of us. And this year, there were some extraordinary things that Veterans Assistance had done. And I know that when I first spent time with Ryan Kennedy talking about some of the challenges facing Veterans Assistance, he talked about the importance of trying to do his best to improve how our veterans were collecting to be eligible for a lot of the assistance that they're there. A lot of times they didn't even know the assistance available to them. And through your efforts and your department that you led, I'm told that we have a $500 million increase in what veterans are getting this year. And a lot of that is just by being organized and being skillful, running the department the way you do, and working, serving as a good conduit, good point of advocacy within the department. So I will tell you, Mr. Secretary, this is incredible, because the work you're doing, that's more money that's flowing to our veterans, more money that's flowing into our communities, just what they're supposed to get under the law, and we're just helping, nothing special. We know that the Veterans Home in Barboursville has taken some steps to improve the quality of care we provide to our veterans, including upgrades in the kitchen and the HVAC system, little things. But, when I hear the word deferred maintenance, I don't like to defer the maintenance. So let's make sure we do more, and you guys are doing more, and I appreciate it. You also are working, I think you work with the federal VA on a retention grant that helps some of the agencies retain nurses, and that actually reduced some of the cost on contract nurses. So you've been doing good creative work. We know that there are major renovations underway up in Clarksburg, and there's an effort to construct a new kitchen and to do a whole bunch of different things. So you're doing a great job. I'm happy you're here, and we'll look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Governor. I would be remiss if I didn't not only thank you for letting me have the greatest job in the world, but also my staff, because the accomplishments you just read are not possible without an amazing team. And so I have the greatest team in the world as far as I'm concerned. One of our initiatives as well is reaching veterans where they are. Some veterans you can reach in the old style brick and mortar way by going to VFW halls or places like that. Others you have to reach in the cyber world, because that's where they hang out. And so not only are we're doing both. We're traveling to different places that are more remote to make sure the veterans there can have access to our services. We are doing town halls and meetings with veterans in various places to make sure that we are doing whatever they need us to do. And also, we are moving into the cyber world. We have a monthly newsletter now for veterans. We have a blog site as well that puts out veteran information. And we are also, next year, going to be rolling out our podcast. So eventually that will again have a lot of information for veterans and how to access benefits and other things that just interest veterans. We also, one thing I wanted to mention is our Veteran State Cemetery. We did some very substantial upgrades there because we were having some serious erosion problems in one of the areas, and we were able to repair that. We also fixed a stream erosion problem that we had. Both those were partnerships with the Department of Transportation, so I'd like to give them a shout out for helping us with that. And also there's a clock in that cemetery that it's kind of iconic, and it chimes, and it's very beautiful. And it had been broken for a little while. Now it's operating again.
Good.
So thank you very much, Governor.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That's great. I know we don't always hear what's going on in all of our different departments. I thought it's important to talk about this because our veterans, they've served our state and our country with such distinction, and we're very proud of them. We're proud of the Guard. We're proud of the VA, and we're going to always stand by them. We are dedicated to their success now and forevermore. And I want to reemphasize our prayers, our thoughts go out to the Beckstrom family. And we're going to continue to pray for Andy Wolfe's recovery. And may God bless our wonderful state and our country. So we appreciate the opportunity to be here today and talk about these important issues and ask if there are any questions from the press. Stephen.
Yeah, on the effort to try to award both police guard members Purple Hearts,
Yeah.
including the posthumous one, is that a difficult process? Obviously, it's a different set of circumstances. Obviously, versus a combat field, say overseas, versus what has obviously occurred with
Sure.
in Washington D.C. Is that a difficult process to do? How is that accomplished?
I know, and I'll ask General Seward to weigh in on some of these, but I know actually because my dad had a Purple Heart from the Battle of the Bulge, so he used to talk to me a little bit about that. But I know that they're already working on that, and it could take sometimes a couple months for all of that to go through. Whenever you're talking about all the many different parts of government, it takes a little bit of time. But from my perspective, especially with some of the changes that were made that allowed for a terrorist act, I think that should make it more clear here. So I'm optimistic. I never like to get out in front of the decision makers, but I would imagine over the upcoming months, we're going to learn a little bit more. I should note in the letter that we wrote to ask for this, we obviously alerted the federal delegation as well. And my guess is every one of them are going to be supportive of this effort. I don't know, General, if you have anything else you want to add.
Sir, I would just add that there'll be a determination made, and whether that's at the Department of Justice and or at the Department of War, Department of Defense, as to the terrorist nexus. That's not a decision that either of us can make, but the paperwork is being prepared at the DC Guard, which is where that has to begin. And then it'll go to the Secretary of Air Force and Army, who have to, following a board and following that nexus decision, they have to make a determination.
Good. Henry, I know you have some questions for our office. I'm ready for them.
Oh, sure. Yes, sir. Governor, the Department of Revenue conducted an analysis of the impact of the Big Beautiful Bill on the state of West Virginia.
Sure.
You have publicly supported the Big Beautiful Bill. So far, the report has been shared with your office, and legislative leadership has not been released to the public. What are the conclusions of that?
Sure. So one of the things that happens is we try to get educated about impacts, but depending upon what the state does, that could have a dramatic difference in what occurs. So for example, whenever there are tax-related changes, the state has to decide what it's going to conform to, right? The way our code works, frequently we mimic what goes on the federal side, but that's not a requirement, obviously, in all situations. So what you like to do is you like to look internally at things. You like to work with the legislature and talk to them so you can actually come to the correct decision about what to do. So obviously these are all preliminary questions and decisions. And then what you'll do is you're going to see the results of that on January 14th when I submit my budget. That'll start to give you a better sense in terms of some of the changes, whether it's tax related or, for example, on SNAP, that we know that there are things that we can effectuate the outcome one of the points that I've always made is there are changes in the big, beautiful bill related to SNAP if you maintain a very high error rate. I don't think anyone wants a high error rate. And so I don't accept the premise that there should be X amount lost. So a lot of the things that sometimes get written are not accurate if you can fix the problem. And that's what we do. That's why what we like to do is release the numbers when they're ready to be released instead of preliminary. So everything's preliminary until we issue the budget in January. Ma'am.
Patty Sperling, 13 News. The other day when you were speaking about foster care, fixing the foster care system,
Yeah.
you stressed how important cost efficiency was and trimming the fat where it needs to be. Are you applying that same cost analysis to veterans benefit that you have with foster care, with the foster care system?
I'll tell you what, we applied it to everything in this administration. I value state taxpayer dollars, I value federal taxpayer dollars, and I don't want to see any dollar wasted for the citizens of our state and our country. So yes, everything we do, I think if you ask around the departments, they know that we want to spend money that's only appropriate for the taxpayers. And if I find waste on the federal side, I'm going to go after it. If I find waste on the state side, we're going to go after it. I think that the people, the state, deserve that. Other questions?
One more thing.
Yeah.
Yesterday on a press phone call, Senator Capito was stressing modernizing the Navy and modernizing the military.
Sure.
And trying to keep it, local. Are there any in-state programs that she also was talking about, holding them accountable, both on the government and the private sector side? Are there any in-state programs that are part of that initiative about modernizing the military? Spoke about yourself as well.
I'd have to get briefed on that before I answer. I know that one thing I could say is that West Virginia is a very proud tradition in terms of its military and how many people we send off. And I know that West Virginians care deeply about that. I've not been briefed by the senator on that and her efforts, but happy to do that. We do know, once again, that West Virginia has a very rich history in terms of both having our people go off to help the country as a whole, or of course to play pivotal roles. What I mentioned a little bit earlier, the transition from the cavalry unit into another unit, that was a good example of how we work to try to, help the Army, the Navy, and others be more prepared because of our transitioning. So there's always a relationship, but I'm not sure we have anything more to add at this time.
And just going back to being like cost efficiency and stuff
Yeah.
like that, if there were any in-state programs that were maybe outdated, would you assume we cut them?
Yeah, well, let me really be clear. I am an advocate for taxpayers. If there's waste, we're going to go after waste, right? So, I know that if there are valuable things that can help our citizens, I'm supportive of that, right? But waste is waste, and I think West Virginians support that. So that's the principle that we deploy, and we're going to keep deploying that. And so I certainly I don't want to see any waste on our watch.
What would be an example of waste that you've seen so far?
Well, I could probably spend a lot of time on waste, but I'll give you some examples. So one of the things we do when we are involved in healthcare and human services is we look at error rates. We look at improper payments that may come up. There are, some issues that come up where, people were submitting unbelievable numbers of the mileage. And then you look and you could go around the world 20 times and you say, wait, that doesn't seem right. And so when people write about that, you say, well, that is a wasteful system. And that allows you to move forward with programs that actually are more rational and maybe where people are providing more evidence to show that when taxpayer money is spent, it's going to be spent responsibly.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any final questions? Yeah.
Yeah, so whenever you're looking at issues with waste and things like
Sure.
that, obviously, you see things like what you just mentioned there, traveling around the world 20 times.
The equivalent of it with the mileage. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I guess my question is, how do you kind of make sure you're not throwing out the baby with the bathwater and end up hurting people that rely on some kind of these programs?
Of course.
Have that, and they're kind of,
I think you have to always look at that. You have to make sure that you're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater and you're analyzing it because some of these programs are relied upon by people here in the state. But I think it's also always the duty of people in state and the federal government to look at different ways to protect taxpayers, right? I mean, it's their money ultimately, and we're the stewards of how those dollars get administered. So I certainly am very supportive of that. But we try very hard to administer programs in a way that are, delivering on the promise of those benefits and following the law. But also, if we identify problems, we're going to act on them. Any final questions? I once again want to thank everyone for coming here today. I don't know, I may see you, we may have one more of these, Lars, on Monday, is that right? And then we may let you go for Christmas. I'm hopeful that you'll have a more relaxing Christmas this year. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. All right. Thanks again. Yes, sir. Appreciate it. Grateful feedback.
Thank you, sir.
Grateful. Thank you again. Thank you. Grateful. Thank you. Good. All right. We'll connect over there. Yeah.